Obviously, Planetside 2 is one of those shooters that just takes a few steps away from your more traditional FPS experiences. But there is no denying that at its core, it's still an FPS, and some of the greatest FPS players that are in this game are masters of their craft. Watching them work can be truly incredible, and with the right mentality and ambition to grow as a player, you too can get there yourself. So, how do you do it? Well, I ain't got the whole story worked out myself yet because I consider myself above average on a good day. I'm not a top 1% player by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I have enough understanding of the game's mechanics to get us started. G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today I want to talk about getting better and just outright sweatier as an infantry player in Planetside 2. So, believe it or not guys, this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a long ass time. Planetside 2 is a game that sports just so many bloody ways to kill your opponents, some of which are admittedly lower skill ceiling and lower skill floor approaches, which is fine, they exist, whatever, but as it stands right now, the majority of the game's core objectives and the ability to have a direct impact on the outcomes of a base capture at most bases comes primarily down to infantry gameplay. Now, an argument can be made that due to the scale of this game, a single player doesn't have a massive impact on the flow of battle. But if you put two forces of 48 players against one another, but one side has two squads of incredibly skilled players on an infantry level, well, then the results are going to speak for themselves. Individual player skill can have a huge impact on the outcome of a fight, no matter the size, and watching yourself improve in that field of the game can be one of the most rewarding journeys to take in Planetside 2, in my opinion. Especially when you start pulling those incredible moments where you just look back and go, I should really be dead right now. But let's get into some of the things you need to take into consideration to improve at the infantry aspect of this game. The first thing we are going to go over today is more of a do as I say and not as I do situation, because clearly I'm running a very pretty game and graphics setting right now, and even as somebody who has a pretty beefy PC running an AMD Ryzen 5900X and a GTX 1080 at 2K resolution, there's no denying that I still struggle to maintain amazing frame rates above 70 FPS in larger fights. And you guys already know why I make the conscious decision to run higher end graphic settings at the cost of frames per second. It's so that I can have better looking videos. It's more of a decision as a content creator over a player in the game. But if you want to be consistently competitive as best you can, then you need to make some amendments and sacrifices graphically, not just for FPS, but also for general visibility. Firstly, reduce your graphics quality to low, but keep your texture quality as high as your VRAM will allow. Typically, most of your modern day GPUs can sit on a pretty high texture quality, something around ultra, and have no issues at all, but it depends on your system. The reason we have textures as high as possible is because Planetside is already a very CPU heavy game, and the texture filtering down to a lower quality happens in real time on your CPU, which just creates even more of a bottleneck where you don't need one to be in the first place. From there on though, lowering your lighting quality to low and turning off your shadows will be a huge help. Shadows are without a doubt the biggest resource hog graphically in this game, and turning them off will produce huge results for you when it comes to extra frames. Lowering your lighting quality also helps to minimize the frame rate hits, and it also helps a little bit from a clarity perspective as well. FX quality being set to low also reduces the impact of explosions and stuff on your frames per second, and considering the amount of them that can happen at any time, it's worth considering just how big of a hit that can have. It also helps to declutter the screen and keeps targets easy to track through busy environments. Terrain quality is set to high to avoid pop-in, and well, it's not really that big a performance hog in the first place, so we don't really worry about that one. Flora quality goes to low. Model quality also comes down to your system, but for a competitive mentality, I think medium is a happy middle ground, all things considered, as it keeps your targets looking a tad sharper at that extended range. Particles set to low as well, because well, that also helps with visual clutter and FPS turnout as well. Set your render distance as low as you need it to go to find something that you're both comfortable with, and let you max out the refresh rate of your monitor should that be the deciding factor. I'm at 144 Hz with this setup on max render distance, so I'm good here. And then of course turn off bloom and ambient occlusion. Yes, the game does look a bit like a polished turd on these settings, but it does give you the most consistent results for being truly competitive, and even I immediately found an improvement in my gameplay when it came to tracking targets and consistency while running these settings. It could even be an interesting comparison video to do in the future, but that's a video for another day. Now, the next thing you need to consider as a player is your mouse sensitivity. Now, this is something that is incredibly personal, and I'm not going to have an answer, the magic mouse sensitivity if you will, will, that will suit you and how you play. You know, it comes down to things like how big is your mouse pad? What's the comfortable distance for you to make a 180-degree turn with your mouse while keeping it low enough to make minute adjustments if you need to? This is all stuff you need to consider. And it's admittedly going to take you a long ass time to adjust yourself to a new mouse sensitivity after spending so much time with another one, but I promise you, spending time to retrain yourself with a new sensitivity that gives you more opportunity to be more accurate as a player is worth the week or so it's going to take getting back into the flow. You can always tune it slightly higher or lower if you need to do so, but I recommend setting a baseline sensitivity that lets you accurately track a moving target, and don't stretch too far from that baseline. Keep it consistent around there and you'll find yourself getting very used to it very quickly. I know that my sensitivity is probably a little high by comparison to some of the better players in this game, but I run a 600 DPI with a 0.288 mouse sensitivity in game. The general rule of thumb is the lower the better within the confines of your setup. So test, experiment, and commit to some changes that let you do more with your mouse and accuracy. But that, of course, is just the beginning, guys. We haven't even begun to talk about gameplay yet, so get strapped in. This is where the fun begins. One of the most important aspects of being a good first-person shooter player in any first-person shooter game you play is down to your weapon handling. Things like your crosshair placement, recoil management, and burst control. Your ability to control a weapon and actually land your shots where they need to be is going to win you gunfights. One of the best things I recommend doing whenever you start using a brand new weapon, even if it's the default weapon and you're brand new to this game, is just aim at a wall at around about a 10-meter range and just lay into that wall for a good amount of time without countering the recoil or the bloom. Then take note of how the recoil handles, how the spread behaves, how aggressively it blooms, and use that information as a means to help you handle said weapon. We've already done a video in the past going deep into discussing how recoil is dictated in this game and how you can read the corresponding stats behind it to predict how you should be controlling it. And that's a video you can find linked in the top right hand side of your screen currently, but I'll be honest, the biggest trap I find people just flat out walking straight on into is holding down the trigger until a target drops. I get it. It seems like just more efficient to hold down your left mouse button or your fire trigger on your controller until a target drops dead, but that is not the case here at all. Even at closer distances, your spread will quickly see your effective time to kill drop off like nobody's business, and the randomness of your weapon spread will produce just hilariously inconsistent results. Every time I hear someone say, I dump a whole mag into somebody and they just whip around and instantly murder me, it normally comes down to the fact that yes, you are mag dumping. Like, that is the reason that people are just turning around and completely one-framing you, because the rounds that you're firing simply aren't hitting the target thanks to your lacking burst control. For most weapons in this game, anywhere between 4 to 7 round bursts, depending on the range and the weapon you're using, is the sweet spot, shifting on the extremes of that spectrum depending on the weapon in question and if it's an extreme weapon in some way, shape, or form. So make sure you apply this to your shooting style. In addition, your crosshair placement is also important to getting the advantage in every fight you end up in. Basically, the long and short of it is, go for those headshots. One of the big misconceptions I hear going around a lot in this community is that you can just aim for body shots and let the recoil kick up to the head. Hell, I'll even throw young Cammy under the bus here and admit that I have made that exact recommendation in videos before. My bad. But that is the last thing you should be doing here. The first few shots of every burst are going to be your most accurate, and with the head of your target being the smallest target to aim for, you want those shots to be accurate as hell to maximize your return on investment. Go for headshots. Every engagement you actively choose to not go for headshots, you effectively double what your potential time to kill could be. And that leaves you less room to engage the next potential target and makes you less efficient on the field. Go get that good headshot ratio and work on improving on that as time goes on. And on the topic of efficiency and working your way through multiple targets, we move on to target prioritization. When you enter a room, round a corner, come up a jump pad, literally every time you get into a fight in this game, you need to always be making assessments as to who is the biggest threat at any given point in time. Sure, the easiest target to go for might be the one whose back is facing to you, but if his mate is sitting right next to him, who is locked, loaded, and ready to kick your ass, you need to focus him first. The same goes if you round a corner and see multiple threats. Sure, that combat medic who is mid-revive might be a quick kill, but the heavy assault that is already taking shots at you needs to be who you focus. The targets that pose the biggest immediate threat to you should always get your undivided attention. attention. Sometimes that means making hard choices, and you'll make wrong choices all the time. It's all about learning via that exposure to multiple scenarios. It's also worth noting that your target prioritization might change midway through a firefight with someone, and a big step towards becoming a better player is being able to make that call on the fly. You could be taking shots at somebody who's running parallel to you because they just simply don't know you're there, and then a heavy assault who does know you're there rounds the corner, puts his shield up, and gets ready to get into a scrap with you. You need to focus that player mid-firefight before you die. It could also depend on the range of the engagement you're facing as well. Like if you spot a cloaker at range that has just taken a shot at range at one of your allies, you should probably focus on them because they're going to have the advantage weaponry-wise. The sooner you deal with that threat, the better. Again, this will take time, but it's an important skill to have. Knowing the limits of your class, skill, and abilities is also an important step to not only performing better, but also self-evaluating yourself as time goes on. Every class has the ability to perform well in this game on a frontline role, in some ways or another, some better than others, but it's all about managing the abilities and gear of your class to get the most out of them. For example, with a heavy assault, do you have the heavy shields necessary to take on another fight? Is there a quick kill that you can get that will get you more heavy shields if you're using the adrenaline shield? Or as a light assault, do you have the jump jet fuel necessary to make it to an area that doesn't leave you as a sitting duck? This is all stuff you need to consider as you get into it. Even resource management and efficiently managing your magazine is key to making the most of your offensive capabilities. For example, for a smaller magged weapon, knowing when to reload is pretty critical in the sense of, do you risk going for a second kill with your half-empty mag, or do you have the time for a quick reload before a new threat shows up? If a target snags you mid-reload, is it better to try and break that line of sight with some cover, make some eccentric movements, and finish the reload, or should you whip out your secondary and challenge the fight there? With an LMG, this changes as well. It's probably more efficient to score multiple kills per magazine as opposed to reloading after every kill, and it's up to you to not get too carried away and get caught out at the worst time with no rounds left either. Once again, this is just an element of playing the game incredibly well and being able to take a stronger control of the battlefield. And as a player, this idea of knowing your limits also comes down to knowing how well you can succeed in the game at your current ability level and pushing yourself over time just ever so slightly to break those limits gradually. If you are somebody who struggles with 1v1s and then you decide to just bust into a room to try and take on a squad worth of opponents, then of course you're going to keep hitting a brick wall and you're going to get frustrated with yourself as a result of that. A fight in Planetside will always present you an opportunity to test your skills at a pace that works for you and slowly break your barriers down. You just need to keep testing that barrier. No one is going to become a god tier player overnight, and we all have to start somewhere. It's just a matter of identifying where you're starting and slowly testing that barrier every time you get the opportunity to do so. Of course, movement and positioning also comes into effect here too, and this will grow over time with map knowledge and general exposure to the game and its buildings, for example. But you should also be considering your flanking routes. Consider nearby open doorways and windows and isolate yourself from those potential flanks. Also, wherever you can, put some cover between your body and a target. The smaller you can make yourself as a target, the harder it's going to be for that opponent to get the advantage on you. In addition to that, whenever you're traversing to a doorway or a window or whatever, try to take into consideration where your opponents are and give them as few opportunities as possible to score damage. Breaking line of sight is incredibly important. For example, running straight on at a doorway because it's the fastest way there ain't smart if there's an LMG pointing your way with malicious intent. By taking your time and approaching these hot zones from cover, you can potentially get the jump on your opponent and make yourself less of an easy target. In addition, rounding corners and not just sprinting into a room and then engaging a target is a lot better as well. There's a key term here known as slicing the pie, where you take a wide angle around a corner as a means to give yourself the greatest amount of reaction time and the strongest chance of catching out an enemy. It also gives you more cover to work with and makes retreating back behind that corner a lot easier if you lose the firefight. By sprinting into a room and then bringing your gun to bear, you put yourself on the back foot of a fight and need to catch up almost immediately. At the end of the day, guys, getting better at infantry combat is something that I truly believe everybody can do. And I mean truly everybody. We all start off at different levels when it comes to first-person shooter gameplay. Some people just have the reflexes and the general dexterity to make it happen out of the gate. But I truly do believe that anybody can get to the degree of being an expert level player with the right amount of time and dedication thrown into it. So I encourage you guys to get out there and start testing the limits. Break down your barriers, see what you can accomplish, and see if you can slowly bump up your KDR or your KPM by 0.1 or something. Just gradually over time, see if you can get your character stats just looking that little bit sweeter meter, the better you get at the game. I've seen people pull complete 180s on their stats in the past, and it's very impressive to watch, so I know anyone can do it. If you guys enjoyed today's video, backhand the like button, it goes a long way to supporting the channel, and if you're brand new to the channel, consider subscribing. Also goes a long way, and you'll get more content like this in the long run as well. If you have any extra tips that you would like to share in the comment section down below, then feel free to do so. I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say on that front as well. On top of that, guys, if you particularly enjoy my content and you want to see more of it, then hit that join button down below, become a channel member. It goes a long way to supporting me monetarily every month, and it means you guys get more of these videos as time goes on. As always, social media links are linked in the description down below. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.